Hello and welcome everyone to FORL Fantasy Showdown. I'm Hayden Raypass, and this week we will be hopefully helping you pick your Fantasy Showdown team at FORL. Now it's the first race, so everyone's going to be on even playing field here. And I will show you a list of drivers and stuff who you can pick from and their worth. And I'll give you a quick rundown on how all of this goes. So in here you see with all the names and stuff and what their worth is, and just to give you an idea of how the worth was distributed, whoever had the most fantasy points for now was the highest worth, and then as you go down your worth goes down. And how this was all calculated was for every win they had, they got 3 points. For every top 5 they had, they got 2 points, and for every top 10 they got 1 point. And in the event of a tie, whoever was higher up in the point standings got the higher running spot. So Will would be up front right now, being worth the most. We're in Steve Slaughter, who's made only 1 start so far this season, is at the bottom. And how the worth will change is whatever amount of worth you get in the race, it will be added to your current total of worth and then divide by 2, so you'll get the average of your current worth and the worth that you gain in the race. So let's say Will wins the next race, he'll get 250 worth added on to his 200 already, and it'd be divided by 2, equaling 225. Points will go by the Sprint Cup Series points, which is what the Cup guys use. So first we'll get 43 points, second we'll get 42, third we'll get 41, so on, so on. You'll get 1 bonus point for leading a lap, 1 bonus point for leading the most laps, and 3 bonus points for leading the race. Now, if your driver does not make the race, the worth of that driver will not change, and you will receive last place points for that race. So if 13 cars started the race and one of those cars that didn't make the race was yours, you'd be given 14th place points, and the worth of that driver would remain the same. And if you do not do any submits to any changes to your team over to the next week, you will have the exact same team that you had the previous week. Now all this info and who is racing, who won't be racing, should be updated on the forums, which will be in the comment below. Same with any kind of changes to their worth and stuff. And there's an email that you may submit your picks to, or you can also PM me on YouTube. You can only select 3 people per race, and then you can also swap them out after races or before a race, but all picks for that week must be submitted before qualifying of the race, and we'll hopefully have an update on who's in the server and who is not before Q, and that will be on FORL, and those will probably be on the forums. There'll be a little link on the description on where you can find who is in the server and who is not to make your last second changes. But enough of all that technical stuff. I bring in someone from FTR each week to help us pick some studs, duds, and ones to watch, and this week I have the race winner and person who made it into the chase, Alex Bates. Alex, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
First of all, before we go into that, how did you win last week's race and somehow make it into the chase?
I think it was a combination of Triffin Davis taking too much fuel, having a very long pit stop, and Brendan McGee pushing me to the win.
Yeah, that was definitely the Cinderella story of the year, with you making the chase after being what we thought was out of it. Let's move on to this fantasy showdown, because we need your advice. Who should we look for in this race? Who should we have on our team no matter what?
Well, definitely the value pick for this week has to be Mike Coronado. Although not very high up there in the points, he's always a contender, especially fast at tracks sort of like Richmond.
Yeah, I was gonna have to agree with you on that one. Mike Cornell is definitely, if you have to have him on your team, he isn't worth a lot. Plus, his average finish I think is like second here. He's already got a win at this track. You know, you gotta pick him. But I think if you had to go with someone else, I think Brandon McGee, although he is quite expensive, he generally does fairly well at these short tracks and stuff, and I think he'll be my stud. But let's move on to someone who we really don't want on our team. Who should people completely avoid, if at all possible?
Well, not to be mean here, but this is probably a given. You gotta avoid Sean Hansen. He's just out there for the cruise, not going for the win. Just having a good time.
And Sean is usually not much of a contender, but he is fairly cheap. He might be a good person to round up your roster, but I do not think that you should probably go for him as far as a win. But one person who I think you should definitely stay away from is Kyle Stevens. Although he is pretty high up there and he's worth quite a bit, his last 3 finishes just have not been where he's been. I think they've all been out of the top 10, and he's number 5 on the worth right now. So, you know, maybe next week take him, but so far he's just not doing very well. But we got a good person and we got a not so good person. What about someone who we wouldn't normally take but might actually be helpful this week? Who would be the one to watch for you, Alex?
Well, one person to watch who is very disappointed after their outcome of last week's race would be Triffin Davis.
Triffin Davis is one that I'd watch too, because he has been good all season but had a little bit of a mess up at Talladega and that costed him a lot. But I think another person who might be really obvious to watch and stuff because he's worth so little, but Steve Slaughter. I've talked to him and he says he's going to be doing the entire rest of the Pro Series, and he's worth the least right now, so he's pretty much a guaranteed start. But, you know, I think he's going to be kind of like a Sean Hansen, not going to go out there for the win or anything. He's going to kind of ride around, hopefully avoid the wreck or two, and hopefully get a solid top 10. But because he's worth so little, although it might not be the best points gain, it could give you quite a bit of money to go spend some more expensive people like Will or Dan next race. So that's this week's Fantasy Showdown picks. Hopefully this will help you out in your Fantasy Showdown team. And as always, you can go on to our site, which will be in the description. You can get much more detailed statistics and stuff to pick your own team. So once you know your picks, PM them to me, and they will be all entered in, and each week we will tally it up, and we'll show you the standings before we do our studs and duds each week. So hopefully this helps you out. We'll see you next week.